Good morning, everyone. I think we have a tough task ahead, just following up on the very interesting sessions this morning. But helping us with this task is, of course, a very, very esteemed, a very senior panel that I've got this morning. If we look at, we just celebrated 25 years of the industry, and we had some of icons like Mr. Reddy up here telling us about the journey we've covered. Clearly, I remember 20 years back, we were 1/20th, so really it's 20 times of AUM growth in 20 years. And as we look back, I think there are some years, some dates that, come to mind. 93, when the first mutual fund industry was opened in Kodari Pioneer. 96, the new SEBI regulations. 2009, when upfront loads were banned. So some years have been quite seminal in the way it's impacted our industry. I think the show of hands idea was good. Do we think 2018 is one of those years which was seminal in the way we will look at mutual funds going forward? Anyone here who thinks 2018? Because the panel that we have today is going to be discussing how we are realigning our businesses going forward. And why do we need to realign now if we've had such a great time so far? We need to realign because if you look back at 2018, just this year, we started the year with the market at a high, and then we had a budget announcement where suddenly, after a long time, long-term capital gains tax was imposed on equity funds. One of the reasons I think a lot of investors came to us in the first place. In the first quarter, it seems like a long time that it's settled now, but really a huge change in the way schemes were looked at with the new classification that every mutual fund had to do. So the hundreds of schemes that we had to be classified very neatly across 36 categories. So again, a very big change in the industry. We also had a compression in the way the TERs were aligned because of a change in the way accounting was happening for exit loads, which meant everyone had to really reduce margin by about 15 basis points or so. That's already built in. We also had some changes around the way classification for some smaller towns used to be operating. So cities which were earlier in the B16 to 30 categories were no longer going to the benefit that they were receiving earlier. So this is change that's already happened and we have absorbed as we sit today. And while that looks like a long way this year, it's actually some bigger change that is coming our way now. And I thought that maybe we can focus some of our discussions around some of the newer change that is coming. And with the benefit of such an esteemed and senior panel, maybe we can pose some of those questions to them. So the format I thought we could use today is that I'll restrict my questions on your behalf to maybe about 30 minutes, and hopefully have a few more minutes left for your questions later on. Yeah. Maybe I'll start with the stalwart on my right, an old friend, and someone who's seen the industry for so many years. So Neeraj bhai, Upfront Commission. That's the one big change that's coming our way. And I know that that has been, in the past, one of the, let's say, the shock absorbers for someone coming into the industry. Because on day one, you have some incentive, some earnings, before you start building up the benefit of trail commission. And then eventually, when you started, I'm sure that played some role in helping you get set up. So in the post no upfront commission and only trail model, how do you see expansion of the industry, especially in the smaller towns, especially with new distributors?
I think for the existing IFAs who also already have a AUM, I don't think there will be a issue for them. They will still continue to grow. But for the newer ones who are joining the industry, we will have to clearly tell them that for the first few years, the earnings is not going to be so high. So generally, we are not requiring any investment in this business. One can, just start with a smartphone, even from your house. So many IFAs, they start from their house and then later on, they have their own office and support staff and all. So I think that is the pitch which one will have to make, the industry will have to make to get new IFAs into the business, to expand the business. And I believe that there is an immense potential, because the number of investor count is even less than 2 crore unique investors. And the ticket size and other things, the way in which the per capita growth is happening, there is definitely a potential. And still in the B30 towns, if you look at the B30, still there is some amount of upfront these people will continue to get. So I think we have to be positive, whatever is the environment, and this is an amazing industry, we feel, and SIPs and long-term equity investments for retail investors. I think mutual fund is the best investment vehicle. So I think we have to strongly convey this message and try and get more and more people into the business.
Right, thank you. So I think mutual funds are still good. B30 and above, it still continues to provide the relief. And in the top 30 cities, the investment requirement is low and you'll have to build up. But again, Dhruv, just coming to you for a minute, there is some belief, some comment that this specific regulation, in a sense, favors the organized distributors more than the individual startups, because the organized distributors can provide that cash buffer, in a sense, because it's the end of the day only a cash flow, whether you receive something upfront or spread it out over 12 months. And therefore, the individual IFA will need to attach himself or herself to a larger network or a corporate entity or whatever to grow, and then eventually, of course, start his own entrepreneurial sort of effort. How do you think IFAs will adjust to this new reality, as well as the reality that gradually TRs have come off with the new slabs that have been announced?
So I think clearly the reduction in TR is something which all of us have to face. And although we have time, I think we don't know what date it will be announced from. If it is announced from 1st Jan or 1st of April next year, I think that's the time that one needs to introspect as to how one wants to grow his business further. Today, if you're already in the business, I think one has to focus on, what are the client segments. One thing is very clear. I mean, if you have the conviction that this business is going to grow, the number of people who need to invest and the amount of money that is going to come in this market, I think everybody needs some sort of advice. In spite of the proliferation of artificial intelligence, online platforms, there's place for everybody. There is a place in this market for all business models, and the IFA model has the most sustainability, I think, in terms of longevity of the relationship with the clients. So all your existing clients, if you hold them, and one thing would be that one is seeing a cut in margin. So you really need to, you need to grow. I think what this last 3 years was a very sweet spot, that you saw the industry that post 2012, the regulator had allowed an increase in TR, which allowed an increase in commission rates. And you also saw the environment, becoming very favorable for mutual funds. So you had volumes happening as well as margins improving. Now suddenly once the margin cut is happening now. So you have to work more in terms of increasing your volumes. Either you increase volumes or you have to become niche, I think. There is a place for a niche player. Are you in a position to get something in terms of advice? The RIA model is there. So if you want to become niche and you want to be specialist, then if you're not going to focus on volumes, then you will have to look at what is the value add that you're providing. And besides mutual fund, what are the other products that you provide to the client, like a whole basket? With mutual funds, you do the whole holistic planning, you provide insurance, you provide other products. So I think there is 2 segments in the strategy. I think each one of us has to introspect, what is my business model so far? Where is my strength? What is my customer segment? Where do I see the growth coming? You will have to focus on growth because margins are coming down. The second, I think, longer term, I think realignment is that we have a push into, ETFs happening. ETFs have come, largely the passive funds have come by way, the money has come from institutional investors, the pension funds and all. But over the next 10, 15 years, if large cap funds don't deliver alpha, there is going to be a push for further reduction in costs. So I think one has to dramatically increase scale, and that possibility is there. I mean, what the numbers show is that maybe we are seeing a 20-25% cut in our margins because of the TR cut. But you have to strategize, okay, can I grow my business 3 times or 4 times? It's tough for an individual IFA to grow on his own. There is limit in terms of individual capacity. Technology can help you, or building teams can help you. And obviously the gestation period has increased. So I think as an IFA, if one is just out of college and one wants to start this as a career, it's very tough. So I think the model will have to be that you need to work somewhere, maybe for a period of 5-6 years, learn the ropes, learn the business, and also build some capital. So that when you start on your own, you have some capital. So I think some sort of capital will be required by all IFAs to, start their business, which was maybe not there so much the need earlier.
Great, thanks. So I think there's a lot to choose from between volume, finding a niche, adding value, and maybe there is some amount of capital that may be required by new IFAs. And that brings me to Chandra, who's had a very interesting model for many years. So Chandra, just, you've seen both. You've seen online, you've seen offline, and one, I guess, takeaway from the recent changes is that with costs coming down, things get better for the end investor, and therefore we should all be happy because something that's good for the end customer is better for all of us. Do you think, and how do you think, some of these changes impact the direct investor or the online investor? Do you think this is something that now allows a bigger flow to come onto online platforms? And where's the model for online going to now settle down as you see it in the future?
Thanks. Good morning. Online has arrived, okay. I mean, about 5-6 years back, been in this panels, probably Prem called me, I don't remember, but been in panels, multiple panels, and I was the only guy who would talk about online and stuff like that. 3 years back, 2 years back, I think online has arrived. Everybody has an online platform. Sir has an online platform. Everybody has an online platform. Therefore, it is not how the investor is going to be benefited by online. Investor needs online. Online means, when I say online, it includes mobile, basically. People want to check their bank account, their whatever, their equity, or a brokerage account, mutual funds. Everything has to be there on the mobile, whether you like it or not. That's how it is. How is it going to influence people is good and bad, actually. I've realized it's good and bad. Good is they have it. I mean, they don't have to go to an, I think 5 years, 6 years back, they had to go to a RTA to get a statement or AMC to get a statement. All that is past, basically. And they are now accessible for their own whatever investments, redemption, switch, or anything like that. It's on the fingertips, basically. That's a good part of it. The bad part of it also, they can redeem it whenever they want to. When the market falls, they immediately have access. I mean, they don't have to call an advisor. They don't have to call anybody. They just decide by themselves that 1,000 points is down today. Oh, I have to get out because my money is going down and all that. That's a bad part of it. Your question, how will it impact the investors? See, online has arrived, but online investors have not arrived. Pure online investors has not arrived. Okay, when we all have online platforms, we are waiting for it, right from your Paytms and ET Moneys and Zerodhas and us and everybody else. We are waiting for the investor to arrive. Investor has not arrived. Okay, that's my biggest. That's my biggest hope, actually. Forget about being quite negative. Let's be positive. That's my biggest hope, that online investors have to arrive. Okay. For online investors have to arrive, we have to, I wouldn't say realign, we have to rethink. Okay. Mutual funds IA is great. I mean, it was ad on the TV, ad online. They spent a lot of money on online, YouTube and stuff like that, which created the online awareness, and the investors came in. But the products for the investors are not there. Online investors we are talking. Who is an online investor? Let me define. I mean, everybody is online. Everybody has a mobile. Right from my kid who is like 12 years old to my mother who is like 80 years old. Everybody has a mobile, and everybody has a mobile app and access and all that stuff. But the real guy who wants to invest 25 to 30. 25 is very difficult. 25 to 35 guy who is much more savvy to he grew up online. I mean, he grew up with banking on his mobile. He grew up with his brokerage account or a mutual fund account or anything. I mean, social media and everything online. Therefore, for that guy, if you talk about retirement, he will not understand. Okay, traditional way of doing it is long-term, 20 years, 15 years, investments, I mean, whatever, equity, whatever it is, they'll not understand. Products have to come. Before the online, I think, I mean, it's just my own personal thought, for online investors to come, where there are multiple online platforms available, people 2025 is available today. For the online guy to come, products have to arrive before he comes, basically, and the product has to be tailored to him. I mean, the experience is there. I mean, you have UI, UX, mobile. I mean, you click it, you swipe it, you get it. I mean, you speak to it, it'll get it, and all that stuff. The infrastructure, everything is there. It's like a road. The road is laid and it's beautiful. I mean, beautiful. Cars have to run on the road to make it useful. Therefore, products have to arrive. Some AMCs, I'm not blaming all AMCs, some AMCs have thought about it, at least it's on their drawing table and stuff like that, but nothing has come out. That, I think, is one thing that will tilt the scale towards online investor coming into the plan.
Right. So online is here, but online customers are still not fully here, and we need some online products to get them here. Okay, very interesting thought, and we'll come back to that, Chandra. I now to move to Sanjay, and Sanjay has seen this industry, I think, first-hand, writing on the industry, and now on the other side, being in charge of a very large digital platform. Sanjay, we had a very interesting session about the millennial in the morning, and just want to get what you've seen over the many years around this millennial. Is this millennial really getting up and coming to mutual funds? And we've seen some data around how online purchase and transactions have grown very, very rapidly. But do you think this is that customer today, the 25-year-old customer who's coming to mutual funds through online platforms now? And what have you seen about the data that you come across?
Thanks, Vishal. So you see, as it was mentioned in the morning, the 25-year, the millennial is a very different kind of a person. It's not the typical person. And running ET for 25 years and last 18 years, the digital part of ET. Even we are, figuring out, how do we tackle this new segment of users? Because the typical ET reader is, they were like, they started on the newspaper and then moved on to the digital platforms because of the brand association. But when you talk about the millennials, they don't associate with the brand. Their consumption of content, for instance, is on social media. So it's not like, they will come to you, you have to go out to them. So that's where you see all the media entities, reaching out on social media platforms to engage with the millennials. Again, their engagement time, their attention time span is very small, very short. So whatever messaging you have to do it in a very short period of time. So I think what we need to do is, when we are talking about these millennials, the benefits have to be communicated fast. It has to be about them. I mean, 20-year story, difficult to cut with them. So you have to start immediately saying, okay, how do you start right now? The whole thing is instantaneous. The challenge is, as was just mentioned, that these people are still not moving into the transaction or the business investment phase right now. It's more entertainment, it's more content, it's more fun. But I think that evolution will happen, because when you look at the 2025, he's still in college or just passed out. Priorities are buying a mobile phone, buying a car, the priorities are different. I think after next 5 years, when they move into a 25-30 category, the basic acquisitions have happened on the consumption side. Then the investments will start happening. What we are seeing is the trend is definitely changing. And for us, what we have seen is the more interesting trend is actually the tier 2 towns and the tier 3 towns. That's where there's a lot of demand coming for understanding, about these investment options. So what we have done is we've started doing content in Hindi, we've started doing content in 10 Indian languages, and we're seeing very good traction there. So what I believe is, while the tier 1 cities are saturated, it's the opportunities in the tier 2 towns and tier 3 towns where probably the information is not reaching out, or credibility is not there, or awareness is not there. And that's where we are seeing, the kind of consumption for financial content is much larger than the kind of consumption that is happening in tier 8 towns and cities. And also, I think people have more time. Opportunities were not existing. Access was a challenge. And I think that's where probably you'll see the first cars on the digital growth highway coming in, rather than from tier 8 towns and cities where you have access. You have so much of access, the concentration of IFAs, of mutual fund industry distribution, it's all there in tier 1 and tier 2 largely. Tier 3, and when you go into the hinterland, that's where they're getting connected now, they're getting exposed now, so they're learning, they're figuring out, okay, we have access. So it was with e-commerce, I think, to begin with, because that's where the first introduction to doing transactions happens. I think financial services will follow and follow soon.
Great, thanks. So tier 1 and 2 towns largely taken care of, tier 3, 4, etc., vernacular, that's going to be the thrust, and it's about education. And I want to turn to Neeraj Bhai for this, because who better than him who's seen both these landscapes. Now, Neeraj Bhai, there is the T30, where it is largely believed that there is adequate coverage, there is a lot of information, and there is the advisor or the distributor that is largely around. And then there is the beyond 30, where the belief is that it's not as well covered. I know both are attractive, so I'm not going to give you that option. But if you had to choose over the next 3 years and look at where will the need as well as the growth be larger, is it in the B30 or is it in the T30, the top 30 or beyond the 30?
So I think it is in both, while you are not giving me a choice, but even when we see that lot of money is coming in mutual funds, we feel that itna jada sales ho gaya, I feel nothing has happened. Because still we are 12% of GDP. Second is that if you look at last year financial savings, only 10% has come into entire capital market. 60% still goes into bank deposits. So you have to look at the numbers of the savings potential. And within the savings potential, if you see, there is no big difference between the larger towns and the smaller towns. Because in larger towns, the proportion of savings in absolute terms, it may be larger. But if you look at the proportion of savings which is coming into capital market and mutual fund, it's still very, very small. It is because on an absolute basis, we feel that in last 5 years, the sales has picked up so much. So I think every individual who is driving a rickshaw, or who is a kirana store, or who is selling pan, they all are potential mutual fund investors, and they are saving into these postal schemes and recurring deposits daily, 200, 300, 400 rupees. And there is a huge mass, and that is even untapped in the metros. In all metro, you have such area where you can go and tap them, right? So I think in absolute terms, there is a huge potential. 130 crore is the population, less than 2 crore is the investor base. Even if I put 25-30 crore having an investable surplus, we have not reached to 90% of the population. So I don't have exact statistics where this 90% is, but wherever you go, you will get some portion of that 90%.
Right, so there's enough opportunity in the metros as well, apart from the
huge opportunity, huge.
Oh, great. So it's important to therefore keep focusing on the top 30 as well as the B30. Just moving on to a different area, and Dhruv, I'll pose this to you. 2018 is different in many matters, and I mentioned some of the regulatory changes, but it's also been a year where after a few years of having very steady returns and very good performance in funds, some of us had forgotten about volatility and some amount of performance pressure. Now, this is a year where, therefore, many more of the questions that investors should be asking about performance, and therefore, did I get the right advice, did I get the right allocation, did I get the right product, etc., are coming back. And one, I guess, discussion in the industry has always been, what is the role of the advisor or the distributor under which framework one operates in? And of course, you may be representing the customer's interest, but are you an agent of the manufacturer, or are you a principal with the manufacturer representing the customer? And forget the legalities. What really is your responsibility? Because one would argue that if you're really the agent of a manufacturer, then you're just passing the responsibility back to the principal. What are your thoughts around this?
So I think at least the way the role of an IFA has evolved. I mean, customary in India before mutual funds came, you had life insurance. And world over, insurance is a tied agency business. It's an agency business where, you have an agent who sells the product. And mutual funds, world over, when it has started with a sort of a open architecture approach. Means there never was a concept of a tied agency approach in mutual fund, that you had one agent and one company, one agent selling one mutual funds product. Therefore, in an open architecture, when you're selling multiple funds, the role has evolved that as a distributor or an IFA, you have to evaluate which are the various products available and then what is suitable for the client. And I think from distribution to advisory, the way the market has evolved is that mutual fund distributors, advice has become an integral part of your function. Today you cannot have mutual fund distribution without advice, because over time you realize that the longevity of the client's relationship happens only when you give him the right advice. So across the market, a customer and a distributor, the role of advice, the role of sales, the role of service, it varies. Correct? And you figure out what is that the customer wants and you offer that. So I think the relationship is a dual relationship. I mean, you as a distributor, you're acting on behalf of the client, but you're also interacting with the person who provides the products. So there is necessary to have a good relationship with him to understand what is the product they are offering, who is managing that money, what is the process that they follow. So you need to do your due diligence with the manufacturers. So that is a relationship. And the way commercially the way it is organized, I think legally it's a principal-agent relationship. You are as a distributor world over. Who is a distributor? Distributor is an agent of the manufacturer. Correct? So your liability in terms is because your contract or your remuneration you are getting is from the manufacturer. And somewhere I think that's where I think the regulator also is not very clear, or the industry is not clear. It's a dual relationship, and I think a dual relationship is very important. Rather than focusing on, the regulator is focused on trying to avoid this conflict of interest. But I think it is a healthy, if there is a good relationship, you have somebody on behalf of the client, engaging. It's very difficult for an individual client to engage with, 10 manufacturers.
Right. Thanks. So I think principally around a principal agent, but of course there are multiple hats that a IFA and a distributor holds. Coming to you, Chandra, now, and I know I'm not suggesting that you're representing the direct customer necessarily, but one of the, I guess, criticisms I've heard from our distribution and advisory friends is that, offering a product being superior only because there is a change or a difference in fee, and then compounding it over 20, 25 years and saying, oh, look, you save so much money by going direct, right? That almost seems to suggest that therefore there's no value added in the alternative sort of advice that one gives, having known that there can be so much variation in fund performance, selection, and so many other criteria. How do you think that plays out, and what's the right model for the direct customer coming through either online or offline?
So I don't represent them, first of all. Okay, I only sell regular plans, basically. But I can see why people are doing it. I mean, because it's my own point of view. They think it's like a cell phone or a laptop or a whatever, cab ride or something like that, where it's a one-time experience and you buy it, and you buy it for free, it's great. You buy it direct, you buy it for free, it's great, and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm sure from morning to now and in the evening too, the whole conference is going to be about why mutual funds advice is great, because it is to be a continuous thing. I mean, all of us know in this room, much better than me probably, that it's a continuous thing. And it has to be handheld. I mean, a lot of people ask whether IFAs will go out of business and stuff like that. It cannot happen, basically. And any advisor cannot happen, because you have to have handhold. 1,000 points went down yesterday, day before, or something like that, today, or whatever. I don't even remember. Therefore, the guy is going to call you and ask. The guy or a girl is going to call you and ask you, what am I going to do? Why is it happening? And who's going to answer it and stuff like that. Therefore, both will coexist. The guy who is like 10 years into mutual funds, having 10 lakh rupees or whatever, some amount of money and a lot of knowledge, will go direct. There's nothing wrong about it. 90%, 80%, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the people will need some form. It may not be full hand-holding. It may not be everyday advice or everyday thing, an advisor coming to your home or something like that, or online or offline, doesn't matter. There'll be always a need of it. And like you said, across the world, that's been the model. It's not that the world has just changed and India is changing, basically. People have tried models, different models, and people have failed. I mean, UK is a good example of failure. US is a good example of balancing. And Australia is a good example of balancing. For across the world, things have changed, tried, and then gotten back to the balance. But there's always a balance in life that people have to believe. There's a balance in everybody's life. The balance will happen by itself. Science tells you that.
Great. So India is a large country and we have room for all models, and we don't have to necessarily choose one versus the other. It'll balance out. Unfortunately, we are little short on time, but I thought that before ending, I'll have a quick round. This is really something as a response I need in 10 seconds. So top of mind is what I'm looking for. Don't really think about it. But what I'm going to ask you is for a wish list from a stakeholder in the industry, and this is your top wish from that stakeholder, one wish per person, if that's okay. So I'll start with you, Sanjay. Your wish from the media's role in helping mutual funds grow. 10 seconds.
So I'll probably give a slightly different take rather than going a media take. I think there's a big opportunity if you can start doing mutual fund in a sachet. Can I, as you know, Dinesh has mentioned that the panwala, you know, the guy who's a vendor on a street, putting in 10 rupees every day at the end of the day. Digital technology today allows that to happen.
So micro-sizing of mutual funds is the big idea.
I think that's a big opportunity.
Take forward. Neeraj bhai, to you. Again, your wish list from an AMC. What is the one thing you think AMC should do, which is on your wish list? 10 seconds.
We have to ensure that a large number of people come into the distribution business, and everyone will have to work and promote this as an amazing profession. Because jobs are, because of artificial intelligence, jobs are being cut. I think this is one industry which has a potential of creating jobs.
Okay, so collaborate to create jobs. Okay, great. Dhruv, for you, the regulator, SEBI, what's your one wish list from SEBI?
I think less regulation. Leave it to market forces, because I clearly see, if you see in USA, there is no limit on TERs. And it's a $19 trillion market. It has amongst the lowest expense ratios in the world. No regulator. So I think if India has moved over from the 90s to a free market or a more capitalist market society, I think the regulator needs a capitalist mindset rather than a socialist mindset.
Great. So leave us alone and let the market factors play out. Great. Okay. And Chandra, for you, last but not the least, what would be your wish list from the tech world, including our RTAs? Sure. You know, what should they be doing to help us grow?
That's difficult, actually. Tech world is given. I mean, this technology available for everything. I mean, if you ask for a wish list, can I take a different take on it, if you don't mind?
In 10 seconds.
In less than 5 seconds, I'll do it. Transparency. See, technology, what does technology give you? Forget about what technology is, doesn't matter. We don't care what our car's engine is, basically. What does technology give you is transparency. If you're extremely transparent, right from the manufacturer to the RTA, to the distributor, to the online guy, offline guy, to the investor, that's one wish list that I have. I mean, we are the most transparent. Everybody says mutual fund is the most transparent industry. But got to be a little bit much more transparent than what we are, and there is scope for that.
Okay, transparency is your response. Thank you so much. Before we end, I thought I'll take just a second for one quick poll because we've got so much experience on our table. Now, the poll normally talks about by 2023, what AUM will the industry be? But I'm not going to ask you about AUM, we'll deduct that. We have less than 2 crore investors today. So, out of a humongous country, all said, we serve less than 2%. How many customers do you think the mutual fund industry should be serving by 2023? So, it's just one number and therefore one guess. 2023, 5 years. 7 crores.
7 crores.
Okay, Chandra, what's your number? 10 crores. Okay, 5 times.
20 crores.
20 crores. Okay, Neeraj bhai, as always, is. Sanjay, what's your take?
I think around 10 crores.
10 crores. So, okay, guys, you've got a range from between 7 to 20. Therefore, you also know how aggressive or how, I guess, do you want to be optimistic or pessimistic? Be on which part of the table you're in. With that, I really want to thank our panelists for their insights as well as the very, very candid comments that they shared with us. Thank you so much.